When the government does something.
I still think
communism.
It's
When the government does something. From the Boston Commune.
The second one translates to Elon Musk joined the German. Now we are invincible. Poland is as good as we are. Next, we finally get Russia. Thanks, General Musk.
But you see, he doesn't know how to hold the baby.
Twitter's a wild place.
I don't know, man. When I did CPR training, there was something related to that.
Baby.
So maybe he knows how to give CPR to babies, and that's like his only training.
I don't know. He doesn't strike me as a person who would voluntarily learn how to, like, assist
Listen to other people.
Yeah.
I don't find myself often thinking about Elon Musk, but something I was considering is that, like, he was born into, like, his parents were diamond miners. They were very wealthy. And I realized that, like, he was born into a situation where, like, problems were solved by the material that caused them. Because his family, like, it's pretty famously, like, they would just, like, buy their way out of problems. And so that's how he's just dealt with everything. It's just, like, he throws money at it. He tries to apply his intellect, but he knows that, like, that's not going to get him anywhere. So all he can really do is, like, flaunt his wealth. Because, like, why his ideas are bad and why he will never really fix any problems is that regardless of how, like, if we ever have any luck of pushing him to the left, like, regardless of that, he is trapped in this place in his mind where his imagination can't come up with any solution that doesn't stem from the problem itself. So he's never going to really fix any of the issues that, like, humanity are actually dealing with. He's like on the same boat as Jeff Bezos of, like, fuck it, we're just going to go off to Mars. Like, that's not fixing the problem. We're just going to use another planet up. That's all it is. It's just replicating the same pattern. It's not actually a solution to anything that we've been doing as a species. So
I'd argue he's more evil than Bezos. And actually, I love that you bring up and emphasize the point that he buys his way out of problems, because most people don't realize this, but he didn't start Tesla. He bought his way into the company and then forced the actual people who started the company to make him like a co-founder and then force those people out of the company. So he literally bought his way into the company, bought his way into being a co-founder, and then forced out the actual founders of the company, and then exploits the labor of the actual people who do the work at the company and claims it as his own. That perfectly lines up with, like, oh, when his Tesla start blowing up spontaneously because there's a problem with the lithium battery packs, oh, we're just going to dump some more money into it, and then we're going to help coup Bolivia.
We will coup who we want.
Deal with it.
Yeah. Also, if you bring up the names of any of the victims who have been killed by Teslas, he will block you on Twitter. He's a very thin-skinned man, and he has a lot of freaks on that website who will defend him. He is the comic book villain, but he's a very... he's an incredibly stupid version of one. But he is a comic book villain.
Rich people are stupid in general. Like, the shit that they spend money on, like...
Because it fills the hole.
Got a hole, buy a melon baller. Buy a sous vide machine. Choose life. Choose a job. Choose a career. Choose leisure and matching luggage. Something about electrical tin openers.
Fun fact, apparently the USSR was the first nation to boycott the South African diamond mining industry.
Surprise. I mean, it's also, I love to throw this in liberals' faces that, like, women in the Soviet Union got the right to abortion 18 years before American women did.
Legit.
Yeah.
No strings attached. Unlike the United States. The United States didn't get Roe v. Wade until 1973.
Yes. And Lenin also released wrongly imprisoned homosexuals, so he was the first SJW.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So when we're talking about, when you say class reductionism, look what Lenin did. We're going to include everyone. God.
Yes, and I always bring this up, but Lenin mandated that public schools were bilingual, that they would teach Russian and Yiddish.
There you go.
That's pretty dope.
Can we talk about, like, the confusing thing in the chat earlier? Or Trotsky was pissed about all the Jews that Stalin was hiring, and now, like, modern Trots are complaining that he did the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck. All I know is the WSWS sucks.
I think they hate just everybody other than the Socialist Equality Party.
What even is WSWS? so that I can
World
avoid
Socialist
it.
website.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. You don't have to go to it because other people already did. And
So that I didn't have to.
Yep.
So do we want to move on from Elon to Ilhan? And Joe, do you want to talk about Ilhan Omar?
Oh, sure, yeah. She's at actual, legitimate risk of losing her primary in a couple of weeks because of all the money. It's the sheer amount of money being dumped into the district by private equity CEOs, APAC, all the pro-Israel groups, and just, more or less all of, the most evil sectors of the ruling class, because they failed to defeat AOC because she's an absolute fundraising juggernaut. In fact, AOC raised more money than any other Democrat in the House, even more than Pelosi did during the cycle, raising so far $10.5 million without taking a dime of corporate money. Ilhan Omar has raised about $3.8 million, but since beginning of last January, all of a sudden this moron nobody guy called Antoine Milton Mukes in the last 3 months alone has raised $3,729,676.52 in just the past 3 months. This is direct campaign contributions. This isn't counting the super PAC money. He now has a cash on hand advantage of $2,016,669 to Omar's $1,111,861, 3 weeks before the primary in a low turnout election because of COVID. And in the district, Milton Mukes is just blasting the airwaves, radio, TV, mailers, blasting everywhere. What's really potentially troubling is the fact that, unlike AOC or Rashida Tlaib, Omar's district is 70% white. What's really kind of messed up is some of the mailers that they're sending out is definitely dog whistling to white liberals to give them an excuse to be okay, I don't have to vote for her. They're attacking Ilhan Omar because she went to Africa 3 times, despite the fact that she's from Somalia. She has the immigrant privilege of not having her ancestors be enslaved by the white man. And among Milton Mukes' donors is Steve Sanger, the current CEO of Wells Fargo. He also sits on the board of directors of Pfizer and Target, and also the current CEO of Blackstone, basically the most evil private equity firm in the world. The Democratic majority for Israel, which is basically the super PAC for APAC. APAC itself has dumped some money in. There's a super PAC called, I'm going to botch the title of it, but it's America's Future for Tomorrow. And then there's also the super PAC, Stars and Stripes Forever PAC. It's dumped about $10 grand in super PAC money against her. Stars and Stripes Forever has got to be the funniest name for a super PAC in the world.
PAC's just called anything less than sucking the president's dick is communism.
Yeah. I mean, I do like it. It's John Philip Sousa is the most American thing we could think of. I'm sure their logo has an apple pie and a fucking, marching band uniform or whatever. An apple pie in a marching band uniform. Yeah.
There's also a super PAC called Stop Ilhan Omar PAC that's spent but the funny thing is it's only spent $400.
They're getting it done. What is Milton Mukes' platform? What are his policies? Because he seems to just talk in slogans and not really have
Yeah, he's doing that liberal thing where he feels a little bit he's kind of a throwback to the early 90s.
Yeah,
where it's all flash and no substance, because he's running on a platform of opposing divisiveness in national politics. According to him, Ilhan Omar has been very divisive, and it's not good for national unity. We must end the divisiveness.
We don't want her. Everybody can chill with us except for her and the people that like her.
This might actually work because of the demographics of the district.
Reality is so much fucking money.
Not just so much money, but so much money in such little time.
Yeah.
Which is truly disturbing. It is a 63% white district, where the median income is over $65,000.
Are there any polls? Who's leading who?
No, not really, but congressional primary polling is never really that accurate anyways, especially in a pandemic primary. For context, a month before the primary for the New York 14th district 2 years ago, Crowley's internal polling had him up 37 points, and he lost by nearly 16. It's kind of a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
And there's like a 30% chance you might be right.
Fuck you, Nate Silver.
He's the dumbest fuck in the world.
Oh, God.
Now he has a whole team of morons.
I know.
Not be able to
And he goes on the Sunday shows every week, and he's like, oh, he's a qualitative authority on, like, statistics. No, it's not. He's just a centrist with an agenda who pretends to understand how math works.
Yeah, and half of those 38 people have gone on to CNN, so...
I love how, like, a lot of his, like, former underlings have now actually kind of surpassed him.
From the Boston Commune.
You want to talk about the post office, Joe?
Sure, it's like the greatest thing ever, like relative to the rot of the American state. It's also like probably one of the most like egalitarian institutions within the government because they do have a legal obligation to deliver to every single address in the country, regardless of how inconvenient or unprofitable it may be.
There are definitely some addresses in this country that are very hard to get to or badly labeled.
Like, for example, UPS can't be bothered to go out to, like, Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, but the post office will do that. They'll make someone go get on one of the ferries and, like, drag a package over there.
That's dedication. Get on a
I
boat.
stopped doing that a couple years ago. The post office is definitely running into some problems, manufacturer problems, I may add. People always go on about how, like, the post office sucks. They're actually very effective, considering the fact they have, like, literally the ultimate financial anchor weight on their necks at all times. Back in 2005, one of the few things that Bush was actually able to get done, which is, it's staggering how little they got done, despite the fact that they had control of both houses of Congress and the White House in that second term. Maybe it's because he blurted out something about wanting to privatize Social Security and his approval ratings cratered 20 points overnight. But that's actually the thing that killed his presidency, not the Iraq War. I digress. In 2005, Congress passed and was later signed by the president a bill that would require the post office to take on the retirement obligation of every employee, present and future employee, for the next 75 years.
Mm-hmm. This is how you deliberately kill an institution, is you do bullshit like this.
The post office is self-funded. Its funding structure works the same way as any, like, non-governmental business does. They don't actually really get money from Congress anymore. Another attempt at killing the institution is like, okay, we're going to cut the money stream off. Sure, they're at a fiscal deficit, but, like, the fact that they still work effectively, despite all of these, like, impediments to them, without the postal service, the whole supply chain crumbles. The whole system is very interconnected. Like, without the postal service, UPS, FedEx, and Amazon would be completely fucked because they actually largely rely upon the post office's pre-existing infrastructure.
So what is the impetus to destroy it as an institution? What is the motive for wanting to get rid of it?
Because, God forbid, we have an example of an institution that isn't operated on the profit motive that actually works.
If you think about it, it's also kind of like the logical conclusion of, like, neoliberal economics, of just like everything will be eventually privatized, everything will go to the market, including the post office, including your healthcare, including your insurance. Like, everything will go to the market eventually. If the powers that can stop these things from happening deem it more efficient to let the market take care of these things, they will let it happen, and that's what they're doing to the post office. When we're talking about the things that lead down the road to fascism, it's shit like this. Like, this is a prime fucking example, is deliberately suffocating an institution that has worked for hundreds of years simply because there's no profit motive in it. So sound the alarms and save the fucking post office.
Actually, the British are actually ahead of us on this front because in 2011, the British government under David Cameron privatized the Royal Mail, which is their equivalent. Here's how big a thing it is that the Royal Mail was a public institution for nearly 500 years before being privatized in 2011. It was a public institution from 1516 to 2011 before being privatized by the conservative government. The one exception in which we are actually slightly less terrible than the British are.
For now.
Yeah.
Yes, for now.
It was 1516 they started the Royal Mail?
Yes.
All right, for context, that is 100 years before fucking Shakespeare died, so...
Yeah, that's a hot minute.
Yeah.
Jesse, what do you want to read?
So exactly 100 years ago, Postmaster General was using the same tactics to wield the Espionage Act against revolutionaries, and in particular, in a letter to President Woodrow Wilson on September 3rd, 1920. I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it, and the context is that basically people were sending each other anti-capitalist material by mail. In nearly every case, there is an insidious attempt to keep within the letter of the law, but in effect to inculcate in the minds of their readers a belief that this government should be overthrown by force, to encourage a belief in modern communism, to hold up as an ideal government the Soviet system in vogue in Russia, to consolidate a class which, encouraged to accept as true that capitalism is dominant in our country, may be induced by direct action, as this term was used by the Third International of Moscow, to aid in wresting the control of government from the so-called capitalist class. This ultimate effect of all this propaganda is an encouragement to violence and those crimes described in Section 211 of the Penal Code, which declares matter tending to incite arson, murder, or assassination to be non-mailable. So I think part of it is the way that corporations have been able to sidestep more general federal legislation. Companies like Verizon and AT&T, like they're just selling data to the government, you know? All right, I just wanted to clarify what I was getting at here. Public and private institutions are held to different standards. The American proletariat, unable to engage and organize through public means of communication, is shepherded into the private sector. The libertarian wet dream of a government thwarted by the freedoms of unregulated market activity obviously crumbles under any level of scrutiny. Telecommunications giants will continue to trade consumer data for generous subsidies and exemptions from federal oversight, while the USPS is threatened with dissolution each time its employees ask for reasonable protections and wages. Thus, we as citizens would be better off with collective ownership of all of our communications networks, regardless of which means federal institutions are using to weaken working-class solidarity. In looking at just the 2020 cycle, the UPS spent over $10 million in combined contributions and lobbying, while FedEx surpassed that, spending over $10 million in lobbying alone. According to the 2019 data, Verizon and AT&T spent a combined $24 million on lobbying, with 179 of their 223 lobbyists having held government jobs. That's 80%. I'm not advocating for harsh enforcement of peacetime anti-insurrectionary mandates, rather for worker-controlled communications infrastructure and postal services. If that requires the establishment of a proletarian dictatorship, so be it.
Correction. Corporations are only able to sidestep federal laws when they pay their bribes. Just ask Microsoft. Microsoft was broken up in the mid-90s. Why? There was political will. Why was there political will? Because they barely spent anything on lobbying. All of Microsoft's competitors in the mid-90s drastically outspent them in lobbying, which is why they were the ones that got broken up in the mid-90s. Bill Gates learned from that mistake, which is why Microsoft is now one of the top companies in terms of lobbying, amount of money spent on lobbying as a result of the lessons they learned in the mid-90s, because they got broken up because they weren't paying their bribes.
Holy shit. Did you guys know that the Espionage Act was originally called the Anti-Anarchist Act?
Motherfucker.
Yes.
Nope.
You know what they called it, discourse around the Espionage Act was those dangerous Slavs.
Oh.
A lot of Slavic immigrants tended to be very obviously revolutionary, because they were the immigrant class of being screwed over the most, and also they had actual relations with people in Russia participating in the revolution. And so a lot of some of the most radical organizers of the time were people from Slavic countries. It was the dog whistle of the late 19-teens. Instead of Antifa, it was the Slavs. The Espionage Act was obviously designed to crush the left, because they were the only group of people actually opposing the war, and it was inconvenient for them. They used the Espionage Act in 1917, and then 3 years later started instituting harsh immigration quotas. Fun fact for the right, up until 1920, we actually had open borders. We didn't have any immigration laws until 1920, when, as a result of the Slavs, the government started instituting very strict immigration quotas and also started rounding up and deporting radical leftists who happened to be immigrants.
All because they endangered capital.
The ones that they didn't outright just murder on the spot.
Well, hold on. Wasn't the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882? That smacks to me of a thing where we were like, no, you can't actually come here. Don't come here. You're Chinese. We don't want you.
The Chinese Immigration Act, 1882, was actually because there was a flux of labor supply. All of these poor workers from China were coming over, and they were basically the Hispanics of the 1880s, how we treat in terms of their place in the labor market. And
right, because they were working on the railroads or whatever, right?
Yeah, they were building the rail lines and working in the mines in the Western territories.
Yeah,
those weren't actual states yet. Those were quasi colonies,
territories.
We hadn't slaughtered enough natives yet.
Right.
Yeah,
they were still territory.
We hadn't done enough genociding yet.
Jesse's got a gem.
I just wanted to interject in the memorandum for the Postmaster General, which was attached to that letter. It was highlighted that the Espionage Act, although it was primarily legislation to enforce in wartime, the peacetime legislation included a provision as follows. Every letter, writing, circular, postal card, picture, painting, engraving, photograph, newspaper, pamphlet, book, or other publication, matter or thing of any kind containing any matter advocating or urging treason, insurrection, or forcible resistance to any law of the United States is hereby declared to be non-mailable.
Cool.
That was actually the second variation of the Sedition Act that the United States has implemented over the course of its history. Because John Adams signed into law the first Alien and Sedition Act in 1799, which actually made it illegal to criticize the government at all.
Might be worth noting that that provision was introduced in the year 1917.
If you do treason or talk about treason, we can totally fuck you up, but we get to decide what treason means, and you don't.
It's kind of like how you can't say the phrase living wage at work. You have the freedom to have a boot on your neck at all times.
The freedoms espoused by conservatives, they only apply to conservative ideology. And that's always been the fucking case. The end.
The contrast between conservative ideology and reality is they always talk about the freedoms to the freedom to fuck over my tenants, the freedom to pay starvation wages, the freedom to exploit everyone to the maximum degree possible for the sake of the pursuit of profit to the exclusion of literally everything else, the predication upon which capitalism is built, as opposed to what freedom actually is, the freedom from depredation, the freedom from starvation, poverty, destitution, freedom from homelessness, the freedom from having to
the change,
work for a wage,
the breaking of the change,
the freedom from having to sell your labor in order to achieve subsistence. But in conservative ideology, it's the freedom to what is the degree to which I can prosper to the extent to the
freedom from want.
Others. The freedom to just randomly kill someone.
Basically the right libertarian platform. Freedom to do whatever the fuck you want, unless you're Mexican.
Have you tried hating on the poor? Have you tried hating on the poor? Weed?
Well, now the Dems don't even like weed, so what are we supposed to do?
Now they're further to the right than they used to be on marijuana. This is the DNC, baby. They fucking suck.
It's the final culmination of the neocons invading the Democratic Party. There aren't any normal ordinary people who are neocons. The only kind of people who are neocons
Project.
Hillary Clinton and Leon Panetta and shit like that. Bill Kristol.
Yeah.
Normal people aren't neocons. That's just not a thing. That's for rich people.
It's letting, in the desperation after Trump was elected, it's letting people like Bill Kristol or David Frum in the door. It's letting things
Or John Kasich.
Yeah, it's letting things like the fucking Lincoln Project decide things for you.
Oh, that is a whole other monstrosity unto itself.
Because you lost to Trump, and not because the Democrats don't offer good things. They do. It's that they decide to run the worst fucking candidates. Like in 2016, they picked Hillary, who's universally disliked and has a lot of fucking problems. She's just not a very well liked politician. And now they have Biden, and Biden is before our eyes basically revealing a fucking policy set and a platform that is indistinguishable from Trump. This is what the Democrats do.
In 2016, Bernie is unelectable, but we're going to go with one of the only people in America who is universally loathed by basically everybody.
Yeah.
It was so ironic.
Wait,
but
universally loathed like bread?
Yeah. Everybody wants to turn
loathed as in like this extreme dislike.
Loathed. Okay.
But like it's I would kind of disagree that like the argument like that the Democrats offer anything good, because nominally they do. And nominally they claim to do. And then they do shit like there's the there's the disconnect between like Democrats have good things. What they mean by this is like what the base voters like us, what we want to do. But there's a disconnect between what they claim to stand for and also at the same time the cognitive dissonance of what their donors who actually fund the party and all the infrastructure that actually make up the party, that the amalgamation of Rube Goldberg structures that actually make up the National Party. It's not like a monolithic thing.
Yeah.
It's the people, it's the entities that fund the party that like come into conflict. Their interests come into conflict with what like normal people actually want. 88% of like the delegates voted down Medicare for All on the platform vote yesterday. Why? Because who the fuck funds the Democratic Party? A little thing called Partners for America's Healthcare Future. They represent the largest hospital associations in the country. Also, dirty little secret of the Democratic Party is they are rolling in the developer money. The only entity that like really can compete with pharma in terms of like who makes the Democratic Party their bitch to the greatest degree is the developers. National Democrats are never going to go for rent control. They're rolling in real estate developer money.
And this is why they allow new condo projects that have only 9 units in the city of Boston. And if you know anything about the zoning code in the city of Boston, if once you have 10 units, you have to offer affordable housing, at least 30% affordable housing. And so they get around that by only building 9-unit condos.
Actually, I think it's more insidious than that because, like, the way they define affordable. I've been having this fight with I've been having this fight with various people, like a myriad of people since January, and several different arguments. How the fuck does it work that, like, what's predetermined already, like, the current definition of affordable? Mm-hmm. Low-income people or people who are, like, looking for affordable housing can't actually afford what is already defined as affordable now. So how the fuck is building more affordable development going to solve the problem? I mean, but that ignores the fact that like supply side economics in general just don't work at all. I mean, it's ironic that like one of the architects, like in terms of who implemented it, George H.W. Bush was actually the one who aptly said in 1980, it's voodoo economics. It's bullshit. It's ironic because he went on to implement various supply side economic policies.
Yeah, it's very much like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps remark that somehow became adopted into the modern lexicon as like a serious statement instead of the joke that it was originally coined as.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, and I'm speaking to the city of Boston, this is what I know. Affordable housing is based on the average median income, and it's like the percentage of the average median income. And if the percentage of 90 grand is still more than most like low income people make, they're building houses that are still not affordable for the people that they say they're building the houses for.
The occupancy rate of condos in Boston right now is like 33% or something. I tried to fact check that and update it, but the Globe doesn't like me because I don't subscribe to them, so I can't read their articles.
I can get around the paywall, so.
Yeah,
also, my grandparents apparently have a subscription, so feel free to like shoot me a message if you need a thing.
Pro tip for people who need to get around paywalls, just view the site incognito.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, if you have no browser cache.
The Globe's gotten around that.
The Globe got around that?
Fuck you, the Globe.
Yeah.
Those motherfuckers.
Like, the problem with the median household income thing, though, and, like, at a place like Boston, the way it's calculated is, like, most people are probably realistically making, like, $30,000 to $40,000. But it's at 90 because you have people like the CEO of Fidelity Investments, who's actually the wealthiest person in the state, living in Boston. You have all of these millionaires, all these people who make, like, astronomical annual incomes, and that dramatically hikes up what the overall median income looks like because This is the problem with the national one. Like, in theory, nominally speaking, the national median household income for the United States is around roughly $60,000 a year. That's horseshit. Majority of Americans are making probably like $30,000 a year.
Exactly,
but then you have people like Jeff Bezos. He's worth nearly $200 billion. So you have like there was a report from CNBC of all people last summer published an article in which they reported that 45% of all Americans work for the minimum wage. 45% of a country of over 300 million people. For 8 hours of labor at the federal minimum wage, that is $56 before taxes. How the fuck are you supposed to subsist on like $30 a day?
I'm trying to find that tweet that I shared in the chat the other night that was like, the year is 2025. The average income in Boston is like $2 million. The only buildings in Boston are a Chipotle, a Sweet Green, and something else. And sometimes Ripping Up to Boston plays in the Chipotle.
This is a segue. Now it's time for something new. I like to think that when people talk about their representatives and politicians, that they actually believe that their politicians are making bad choices, not because they are capitalists, but because they just don't know how to solve problems. But I mean, the truth is that in the same way that the primary responsibility of a corporation is to pay out big dividends, like the primary responsibility of a politician is to reward the lobbyists that get them elected. And it's not really like you can't inject morality into such a corrupt system of governance. You just fucking can't do it.
I have a good example to back up the point that Jesse just made. UPS, they had a shareholders vote a couple months ago. Sometimes, activist investors, people who want to actually try to work within the system to force change, they'll get things approved on the annual shareholders vote. And so the board makes recommendations on how shareholders should vote. And there was this one question that was put up to a vote that the board of directors of UPS recommended shareholders vote against. And it was this proposal to have UPS divest from any kind of investment that may be profiting off of war crimes, human rights abuses, and or genocide. The board of directors advised against disinvesting the company from investments profiting off of genocide, human rights abuses, war crimes, and torture.
Hey, and that brings us back to Elon Musk.
Hey!
Yay!
Yeah, well, at that point, the UPS would have to divest entirely.
It got crushed by a lot.
War crimes are profitable, yo. Gotta get that bottom line.
Big Brown likes war crimes. What can I say?
Is that big cheese, big dairy?
No, because it's a nickname for UPS because the giant brown trucks.
I've heard Brown. I've never heard Big Brown, but it makes sense.
Also, very interesting name to embrace. We're the Big Brown.
What can Big Brown do for you?
It is borderline astonishing how much money Land of Lakes uses to lobby.
Oh, what do they do? Who are they killing?
Have you ever looked at how much Ocean Spray cranberry spends?
Who are they killing? Who does Ocean Spray kill, and who does Land?
They give a fuck ton of money to Joe Kennedy, actually.
What corruption are they doing? That's the only reason. Come on.
That's a good question, Scott. Who is Land of Lakes genociding? Let's get to the bottom of it.
Genocided the girl off of their logo.
My cats are fighting and sneezing.
Joe's got the
what the fuck? Who is this? They gave it to who?
Ocean Spray. This is the Ocean Spray.
Look up Land of Lakes on Open Secrets. It is fucking bizarre. They've lobbied tens of millions of dollars. What
the fuck are they doing?
It's big cheese, bro. That was why I brought it up.
And butter. The Land O'Lakes Incorporated Political Action Committee, between January of 2019 and June 30th of this year, they have raised $299,272.79.
Who's that for? Jesse, did you want to talk about Portland?
I did, but I still don't really have, like, there's actually a pretty good Reuters article, but I don't want to just use that as my primary source, so I don't really feel comfortable.
I'll say this, that you should keep an eye on Portland. It's very important what's happening there.
Yeah, there's a guy on Facebook called Rod Weber who's just
that's more than I thought, actually.
You can friend Rod Weber on Facebook, and he's just doing like tons of live streams of Portland, which is great.
He ran into Unicorn Riot the other night.
Oh, that's good.
That was fun. You can also follow the Unicorn Riot.
I just looked it up on Open Secrets. Since the year 1990, their political action committee has raked in $3,910,757. And Land O'Lakes, since 1998, they have spent $15,296,190 on lobbying.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because they are part of like Big Dairy, you know.
Also, interestingly enough, second top recipient is Amy Klobuchar.
Amy Klobuchar. Land O'Lakes, Amy Klobuchar.
Fucking shocking. Would never guess. Would never guess that Amy Klobuchar is corrupt. She seems like a super genuine woman.
No, it's not that. It just seems it's not that she's corrupt. Obviously, she's corrupt. She's like one of the shittiest politicians in America. I mean, she's also one of the most terrible bosses in general. But for some reason it amuses me that like Big Cheese gives her so much money.
Well, she's from Minnesota. That's why.
From Minnesota, don't you know?
According to the food pyramid, you're supposed to have 2 to 3 servings of dairy per day. Ooh.
Yeah,
you're supposed to have enough dairy to give you a heart attack every single day.
According to the food pyramid that was drawn entirely by lobbyists, you're supposed to eat like 4 loaves of whole grain bread a day.
You're supposed to have 2 heart attacks a week.
How do you
That's how
eat
it works.
all that food?
Them's the rules.
Supposed to have free-range protein at least once per day.
You're supposed to have pasta with every meal.
Yeah, bread,
Stop
pasta.
describing my diet in college, damn it.
Yeah, college is the only time when you can eat according to the food pyramid.
I ain't talking ramen, homie. I'm talking that good shit, that Barilla Brands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
But
that was like my dinner, like basically for like 3 years, like 5 days a week.
Barilla, if you're listening, pay us.
Give us pasta.
For the exposure.
Give us pasta and maybe all your money.
Fuck you, pasta me.
Okay, but here's the thing. What is the other thing we know about Amy Klobuchar?
She's like one of the most abusive employers in America. She has the highest staff turnover rate of any member of Congress dating back to when she took office in 2007.
Our listeners should feel encouraged to Google Amy Klobuchar, Chris Fleming, because Chris Fleming, who is a comedian, does a very just really exquisite Amy Klobuchar impression, like low budget Amy Klobuchar. It's amazing.
The other thing we know about Amy Klobuchar is that she was created at the Chicago School of Economics when somebody accidentally divided by 0. Fucking terrifying.
It's kind of like how Pete Buttigieg was like created in a McKinsey lab. But also, we should encourage our viewers to Google or go onto DuckDuckGo, which is basically the better version of Google, less evil kind. Google the phrase Amy Klobuchar stapler.
You mentioned DuckDuckGo, and as
the less evil Google,
and as like an open source enthusiast, I also want to plug the programming language Perl because Perl is the fucking shit. I love Perl, and DuckDuckGo has a Perl backend.
And of course, the other thing we know about Amy Klobuchar.
The president actually sent out a tweet. He made fun of me for talking about climate change in the middle of a blizzard, and he called me Snow Woman. So I wrote back, "Hey, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard." So I wrote back, "Hey, Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard." So I wrote back, "Donald Trump, the science is on my side, and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard." Sometimes, if you haven't noticed, you use a little humor. Like when he called me Snow Woman at my announcement in the middle of that thing, I wrote back on Twitter, "I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard." So I wrote back, Hey, Donald Trump. So I wrote back, hey, Donald Trump. So I wrote back. I tweeted back. Science is on my side. And I'd like to see how your hair would fare. And I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. And I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. Mr. Umbrella Man. Senator. And he called me Snow Woman. So I wrote back, I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard.
Well, Joe took off his headphones about halfway through.
Joe is very mad at me now.
Why? Why did you have to do that to me, Scott? I had to endure that for a year of my existence that I am never getting back. I thought I had survived.
Death stare at the end.
Yes.
But that's because he's a sociopath. He doesn't know how to do like normal people things.
Hair's falling.
But that would be like a very effective like method that like the CIA could use to torture people into giving people information up. Just strap them to a chair and just play that on a loop for 8 hours.
There is a Cheeto in the White House, folks.
How would your hair fare in a blizzard for like the next 8 hours?
The Orange House now is getting Cheeto dust everywhere.
I want a remix. I want somebody to make like a techno song out of that whole Klobuchar thing.
How your hair would fare in a blizzard.
I just can't deal with Klobuchar anymore. She's just
fucking Vic Berger with the air horns.
I mean,
Joe, do I have to show you the fucking compilation again? She's our most hilarious.
No! Stop! Maybe stop.
Some funk guitar in the background, like.
No, it's just
I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard.
Oh, it'd probably fine. I mean, I'm from New England. Not the point.
The
point is.
Okay, well that's the end of the show.
My brain is tired. Objectively, she's evil. Ah, fuck.
What have you done, Joe?
But I broke Jesse and Scott. Success!
I don't know what's happening.
Success! I broke everybody else in the show first.
God damn.
It's like, she's objectively evil. She's like upfront about like, no, you can't have nice things. Because I just don't want to give you nice things. But like, she's so fucking boring. She has no personality other than like she whips staplers and binders at her underlings.
Yeah, she's an empowered woman, great hair, sense of humor. I don't know what. There's nothing not to like, Joe.
An employer who makes you like shave their leg hair.
And she's from Minnesota.
She's a driven.
Everybody is friendly.
There's nothing not to like.
I think
driven is just a euphemism for sociopath.
Of course, Pete Buttigieg was fucking pissed at the end there because she basically took a page out of his playbook, yo.
She stole his thunder, and he ran out of original ideas that haven't already been scripted.
He called her stupid at a debate.
The one redeeming quality of Amy Klobuchar is that, like, she was the one person who seemed to infuriate Pete Buttigieg more than anybody.
Bernie just kind of made Pete, like, malfunction, whereas, like, Amy actually pissed him off.
Everybody else in, like, the debate stage is like, oh, she didn't agree with them, but she, like, kind of, like, respected them and, like, seemed to, like, genuinely like them. Like, Bernie's like, oh, like, I don't agree with Bernie on any of these things, but I like him. He's a very nice guy. I respect him. We worked on many things. Whereas Pete Buttigieg, she's like, I want to fucking destroy this little shit. Do you know how many interns I had to make cry to get to this point in my career? And for you to just show up out of nowhere?
Throw back to that tweet of a random candid romantic shot of Pete Buttigieg at the fucking Holocaust Memorial.
Oh, yeah, that.
Instagram picture?
Yeah, it sounds to me like, this is the guy.
This guy right here. He's giving me real points at the fucking Holocaust Museum, this guy. Ugh, not a good look.
Mask slip.
Weird. Fucking weird.
I just don't know who'd be like, you know what, honey?
I don't know where you're going with that.
See it through. See it through, Jesse. Do it.
You can do it. You can do it. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Just fucking move on.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about, guys? Or we all laughed
we never got to Portland, man.
I actually wanted to say
what I said is support Portland and keep track of Portland or Seattle. They're both very important.
Yeah, keep track of it. That shit
arresting
was like...
parents is also like, that's a continuation of like the border separation and all that shit, which is more fascism. So
actually, the Chicago Tribune reported this week that the federal government is expanding that program to Chicago starting a couple days.
Yeah, fucking Lori Lightfoot. What the fuck? She sucks.
But she's a neoliberal, so what do you expect?
No, but she's a great example of the type of like, she's like a queer black woman, and then like she's like, her policies are just fucking awful, It's like a great distillation of like all the problems that we've been saying with like these fucking neoliberal fucking like these corporate Democrats. Is that like, yeah, they have like the fucking like qualifications if you want to look at it on the surface level, but their policies are like still just as like reactionary and just as harmful as what we're already dealing with.
I don't even think it's about that. I think it's about like, we want diversity, we want the diversity, but we don't really want anything. Like, I still remember when she got elected, I was on the red line with Ellie, and her phone went off, and like, there's the first ever black person got elected to Chicago. And like, okay, that's cool. And then like 3 months later, she's like fighting with the teachers union.
Brandon Sutton said something like, the like epitome of liberalism is the systematic breaking of every hurdle by one person from a demographic at the expense of every other person in that demographic.
Yeah. Also, to quote Sutton, he was, I forgot when this was several months ago, and he's talking about like how, they're shitty at everything. Like, the one thing that they're supposed to be good at is like performative anti-racism, and they can't even do that.
I want one of us to read the Biden statement on the forceful detainment of protesters, because it was fucking disgusting. This is the motherfucker that I don't know what percentage of the country is excited about I don't think anybody is actually excited about voting for Biden. I've literally met no people in real life that want to vote for Biden. They just don't want to vote for Trump.
Sadly, I have. Actually, I've met people who are excited to vote for Buttigieg, but that's a whole other discussion.
That's a whole thing.
The booty bros.
I'm pretty sure that my ex's mom is really, really excited, because she would be. She's like the kind of lady who's like, I'm going to put a, coexist sticker on my car and a nice, like Black Lives Matter thing in my window, and then support
racism will be canceled.
Also, full disclosure, I had a relative who voted for Bloomberg, and their justification was he sold good products.
Yeah,
I still haven't forgiven them for that.
Terminal. Does anybody have this quote? I can just make one up.
I have said from the outset of recent protests that there is no place for violence and destruction of property. Peaceful protesters should be protected, and arsonists and anarchists should be prosecuted. And local law enforcement can do that. When President Obama and I were in office, we protected federal property. We were able to do it without the Department of Homeland Security turning into a private militia. And it can be done today, but that wouldn't help Trump's political interests. He's determined to stoke division and chaos, and it's not good for the country, but Donald Trump doesn't care. His campaign is failing, and he's looking for a political lifeline. This isn't about law and order, it's about political strategy and to revive a failing campaign. Every instinct Trump has is to add fuel to the fire, and that's the thing. That's the last thing we need. We need leadership to calm the waters and lower the temperature. That's how we will restore peace to the streets.
Yeah, says the motherfucker who gave Blackwater tens of billions of dollars in contracts.
Yeah.
May I add, this is also a man who, during a Senate committee hearing in 2001, called for holding and promoting raves to be a federal felony offense. So
this motherfucker has never even tried Molly. God damn it.
Seriously.
Seriously, this is a man who in 2001 called for holding a rave to be a federal felony.
Now listen here, Jack.
Things, 19 years ago, it's not that long.
These kids are doing too many. Their kids are too high. They're doing too many rolls.
They're hopped up on goofballs.
Why can't they be like good American boys and getting drunk off of alcohol until they can't remember who they are or where they are?
Long hair doing the candy flipping and all the... in the
If you want to blow off steam or be a normal, a red-blooded American male, alcoholism is the way to go.
Die slowly from alcoholism. That's the most patriotic.
It's the American way.
Expression of
It's the American
not the wacky tobacco.
Puwacky.
Yeah, and that is why Biden is Trump. He's not going to do anything.
It's real fun. It's real fun to be an anarchist and have nobody fucking know what that means, and have people in power be like, "You're bad. We're going to prosecute you."
Again, I present the video of like Trump over the 4th of July, what he's talking about, and I quote, "The Marxists, the anarchists, the looters, and people who in many instances have no clue what they are doing." I saw that for the first time on Saturday, and it still makes me cry laughing every time I watch it.
The Marxists, the anarchists, the taint, the grundle, the fleshy fun bridge.
The clitoris.
And I just want to remind everyone that when it comes to Joe Biden, it was Obama who said that the Baltimore protesters were thugs, and Obama did start the separation program at the border. So,
like 2010, when like a Harvard professor, I think his name was like Henry Gates, who was a black professor, got like arrested by the Cambridge Police Department. And after that happened, Obama's words about the problem of police brutality were, and I quote, "Black men are not good fathers. They are not a good example. And black fathers need to lead a better example. And that is why we have the problems that we do."
Yeah, all the black men should just become president
America's
like I did.
first ever black president in the year 2010. It's white supremacy and capitalism are deeply intertwined, but it's not just one problem. One washes the other.
Yeah, like intergenerational trauma. Like, it's totally not intergenerational trauma at all.
Yeah.
It's just black men. They just need to be better.
Yeah, it's not, You're not going to solve the problem by putting it there, basically.
Yeah, the person is not the problem. The problem is the problem.
Do we have anything else we want to talk about?
The Democrats are still way more evil than people realize. Like, all the liberals are up in arm about, to some degree justifiably, because some of them are actually genuine about their outrage at the kids in cages situation. Most people don't realize that actually began in 2014 under the Obama administration. And it came out in the funniest of possible ways, because the Associated Press, in 2018, when they were reporting on the Trump administration's children in cages policy, they accidentally used a file photo from 2014 and then were forced to issue a correction that, oops, even though we're talking about something in 2018, this photo is actually from 2014. Oops, and that's how it got into the general.
We did fascism a long time ago too. We did fascism last time.
We've been doing the fascism ever since, but like you just kind of hope that you guys forgot about it, because we had a president 20 years ago who played the saxophone.
We did a fascism, but please.
This was the wrong.
Think about it.
Sorry, this was the wrong fascism.
Next slide.
Hey, our fascism is better than your fascism. Our fascism is totally better than your fascism, because ours has a smiley face on it.
Wrong, China.
I did want to say about Portland, just to echo the, please, everybody check it out, look for some shit that's being filmed on the ground, because for some reason, this whole, shit's been crazy for a very long time, and even when I read, federal people are snatching people off of the street, initially I was like, yep, everything sucks, so that makes sense, but, actually looking at videos from what's going on there kind of made me step back, and, it made it feel a little bit more real, very real. That was my oh shit moment. I was like, oh yeah, I've known, academically that the world is fucking ending for a while now, but now I actually feel it, and I can see what's happening.
We're the frogs in the pot, and we're just finally starting to feel heat.
Yeah, we've been reading newspaper articles about how we're in a giant pot with, burners underneath us for a long time, being like, oh yeah, yep, what are you gonna do? Like, big surprise. And now we're like, oh shit!
I've been seeing a growing number of prominent scientists over the last couple of months have actually been coming out and saying that we already ran out of time. We don't actually have like a couple years left. We ran out of time several years ago. And now it's kind of like damage mitigation. Instead of like a third of all global food production is wiped out permanently, maybe we get it down to like 20% of all global food production is wiped out. That's kind of the situation we're in now, according to a growing number of scientists.
And let's not forget, like, we're not just communists because we like think it sounds cool. Like, I don't know the plural for impetus, but the
Impeti?
I think you can just use the word impetus.
One of the primary impeti for
that sounds like something out of The Man in the High Castle.
One of the primary
You're talking.
All right, fuck it. One of the primary reasons it would benefit us as a species to adapt our mode of production to meet human need is that we won't be in this crisis of like overproduction, because the amount of resources that not just like the capitalist class, but like the US military is seeking to exploit to amass more capital for the ruling class. Like, it's led us down this fucking path of irreversible, basically global extinction. Like, species are dying at a rate that is completely unparalleled to any previous period in the history of the planet. Like, analyzing fucking ice cores, looking at the fucking fossil record. Capitalism is killing the planet more quickly than any natural disaster. So keep that in mind.
It gives a whole new level, a whole literal level to the oft-used aphorism. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Surprise! We're getting that. That's just a great surprise.
Everyone.
But it's not really a surprise that the military is doing that, since they're basically the ruling class's like global repo man.
Communism good.
Extinction bad.
Extinction bad.
Yeah.
Capitalism also bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Joe, who said that quote originally?
About it's easier to...
Yeah.
It's not really attributed to anyone, because it's unknown who actually first said it, because it's been said and referred to many times.
Okay, so we'll go back as far as we know.
Some people on the internet attribute it to Mark Fisher. Oh no, sorry. That's completely wrong.
No, it's true. Mark Fisher was the one who made it popularized, but it was originally Jameson who said it, and then G-Jack quoted it, and then Fisher popularized it. So.
All right, so it was a bump set spike kind of effort by the...
All right.
How did we go a whole episode without talking about G-Jack?
Kittens.
We're gonna look at some cats. Are we all set for the night?
See,
can we wrap
you
up?
Guys, are we all cat parents?
Yes.
Dude, see, like, you need the virtual realm to experience this, but like the other three of us, like, we get to experience the joy that is being a cat parent in person, up close and personal. Bro,
well,
you don't know.
I have to drive about. I have to drive about 3.5 miles to see my cat children. But like,
for the listeners, I put on the Adorable Stars Twitch stream, and now I didn't know it started so much controversy. Okay, I will try.
The official statement of this podcast is that all cats are comrade.
Yeah, all cats are beautiful.
Also, on a serious note, I would argue that owning a cat, or any pet really, is actually socialism in practice. Think about it. You are not reaping any material benefits from them. You do not expect anything of them. You don't extract any profits from their existence. You don't derive any like material benefit from their existence. But you do get their company, their enjoyment, what have you. You provide for their basic needs without expecting anything in return. You shelter them, you feed them, you clean their shit box, what have you. You don't get anything back in return other than like their company and the fact that they're adorable.
Yeah,
and it is well documented that Lenin and his wife often brought their feline companions to the round table during discussions.
Oh, Lenin was a cat daddy.
Lenin was a cat daddy.
Fucking the first SJW and a cat daddy.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way to do it.
That's great.
I think that is as wholesome a note as we could possibly hope to end this discussion on.
I agree.
I agree.
Oh, actually, it's some...
No, Joe. we can't do this.
Come on, Joe.
Actually...
We found the happy place.
Yes, just let us have it.
Oh, my God.
There's actually a looming student debt crisis. We're about to go over a financial cliff on October 1st, when all of the federal student loan payments restart. Because in July, 32% of American households miss their housing payment. Unemployment is at 18%. But how the fuck do you expect people to be able to pay their their backdated student loans? They can't even afford their housing expenses. 45 million Americans have federal student loans. Those loans restart on October 1st. And then in Massachusetts, 2 weeks after that, the eviction moratorium expires. It doesn't get pushed again. It's going to be like a cascading like feedback loop almost.
Also, they voted against banning tear gas. So
yeah, that's actually something we should discuss because like in all seriousness, how in the fuck, this is what annoys me the fuck out of me about liberals. Like, oh, we can't do anything because of the governor. Oh, we can't do anything. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Or in theory, we should be able to do it. There are 160 seats in the Massachusetts House of Representatives. That means you only need 81 to actually get anything through. Democrats have 127 out of 160. That's 80%. And there was a bill to ban the use of tear gas, a chemical weapon whose use in the theater of war has been banned by the Geneva Convention for over a century. It is a chemical weapon that is illegal to use in war, but for whatever reason, it's still legal to use on the civilian population. So there was a vote on it this week. It got voted down, 38 votes in favor of banning chemical weapons on the Massachusetts civilian population to 121 votes against banning tear gas.
And were those votes public? Can people look up whether or not they can indeed? Mm-hmm. So maybe if your representative voted against this measure, maybe you should definitely not show up at their house with a weapon. I mean, you should write them a mean letter.
In the game.
Are we in fact
mayhem in the game?
Are we in fact advocating for Molotov cocktailing in our state?
No, we're not. Parody.
No, of course not. Don't do that.
Definitely don't do that.
It sounded like you were saying that for a second. Just a little bit.
No, I would never suggest.
I know my state rep voted against it. Apparently he got out on bail.
Oh, so he's not in prison anymore.
Alpha move. I'm voting from prison and I'm voting against your right not to get tear gassed in the fucking face.
Sup, girl?
That guy is a sup, girl. He's a fucking alpha.
Nangle? Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, like 2 weeks ago, lawn signs for his campaign just popped up everywhere. Like, out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't like, like a gradual buildup of lawn signs in, like, the district I live in. It's just, like, out of nowhere. Just, like, they all just appeared. It's bad enough that they're, like 7 or 8, like, Kennedy signs in my neighborhood. Like, I can see one from my living room. But, like, there are all these Nagel signs everywhere as well.
There's a Kennedy sign near Maverick in East Boston.
I can see one from my living room, and I have to resist the urge every single time I see it to put on my shoes, walk across the street, and rip it out of the ground.
I was about to say, is it in your window?
I have to admit, though, the one downside to being a cat dad is that any maintenance of the blinds in my windows is in vain. So I've had to replace the gaps that the cats have caused by, like, tweaking out at the window and, like, trying to spot birds with Bernie signs. So my heart dies a little bit each time inside, but, like, still chugging along. I'm just doing okay.
I don't know what you mean by in vain. Doomed is a more accurate word.
I'm still in the game, guys.
Doomed is more accurate.
I'm not dead, and I have you guys, and we have each other.
Yeah.
And I love you guys.
And we found camaraderie after all.
Take us out, Scott.
I'm taking us out. Well, we discussed his passing last week, and I just want to quote Michael Brooks really fast and leave us with the message of be ruthless, with systems and be kind to people. That's a good message to leave everything on for the evening. We've been talking for a while, and I'm getting rather tired. My name is Scott. You can follow me on Twitter at DeathMullet. I'm also on Instagram at the same name. Go, Joe.
I'm Joe. I'm on Twitter at JLFB96, on Instagram at JLFB1996. Ellie, go.
Ellie. I am on this podcast, and that's where I am. Go, Jess.
What up? I'm Jesse, and I don't have a Twitter handle, but I do have a SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/contingentsboston. And reminder to visit comrade-rosie.org. If you are in the greater Boston area, there are resources for people maybe struggling with mental illness or substance use disorders. There's links to treatment, to low-cost counseling, and other helpful things like food pantries. And we have an ask on there for the Breathe Act. Contact your senators and representatives to pass the Breathe Act. And on the state level, we have a list of asks for you as well on the website. Again, comrade-rosie.org. That was not a very good...
You did
plug.
good.
It was fine.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Scott. I'm going to make
cute, so
probably make myself sound better in post.
Fix it in post.
It's the best part about being the producer.
And as always, we have a Twitter, also an Instagram. It's at Epic Incredulity. We have a Patreon under the same name. We have a YouTube as well. I need to upload the last episode. I forgot about that. Whoops. And as always, that was your Epoch. Enjoy. Thank you. Oh, fuck. How do I stop?
Incredulity, incredulity.